injury away from this league going back to pre-2024, not 2023, but everything lower in 2024. Like, we all know this league is nowhere near as culturally relevant right now as it was in.
Let's stop pretending this is still about fairness. What started as players asking to get paid more has quietly turned into something else, and the league knows it. Behind the scenes, words like unsustainable and overreach are being used, while publicly the WNBA Players Association is doubling down, issuing statements that sound less like negotiation and more like brinkmanship. And now the WNBA just made a move that changes everything. No lockout, no dramatic shutdown. Instead, something far more dangerous. Teams are about to start sending qualifying offers.
The league knows it's a problem, but the players, and this is where the kind of lack of professionalism on the player side comes in. Like, they're like reposting stuff about striking. They basically said here, at midnight it expires. Despite demonstrating our willingness to compromise in order to get the deal done, they've shown no willingness. From what we've seen, the players have said,
real contracts, real money, not future promises, not percentages in a press release, actual numbers landing in players' inboxes. That's when solidarity gets tested. Because it's easy to hold the line when the fight is theoretical. It's a lot harder when you're a mid-tier player making $75,000 or $100,000 a year and your agent calls with an offer that could double or triple your income overnight. Suddenly, this isn't about collective power, it's about personal survival. And while the union is framing this as the league running out the clock, the reality is much colder. The clock isn't running out on the owners, it's running out on the players. Arena dates are at risk. Expansion plans are frozen. Sponsors and broadcasters are watching closely, not emotionally. Hovering over all of it is the reality no one wants to build policy around. The league's current momentum is fragile, and it's heavily tied to one name, Caitlin Clark. This isn't a morality play. It's leverage versus timing, unity versus temptation. And in the next few days, players across the league are going to have to decide what matters more, the fight or the future. Because once those offers go out, this stops being a negotiation. It becomes a test. Everyone was bracing for the obvious next step. When the collective bargaining agreement expired, most people assumed the league would respond with pressure, a lockout, a public showdown, something loud. That's how these disputes usually escalate. Lines get drawn, sides harden, chaos becomes visible. Instead, the WNBA did something far more calculated. They stayed quiet and moved forward. Under US labor law, once a CBA expires, leagues can operate under what's called a status quo obligation. It's boring legal language, but the implications are explosive. It allows teams to continue business using the framework of the expired agreement. No new rules, no renegotiated terms, just forward motion. And that's the move almost no one saw coming. Rather than freezing the league, ownership quietly informed teams they could begin issuing qualifying offers to free agents. Not hypotheticals, not placeholders, actual contracts using existing salary structures. According to reports, front offices were briefed directly and told they could start making offers immediately. That decision flips the entire power dynamic. Because a lockout unifies players, everyone is shut out together, but qualifying offers do the opposite. They introduce choice. They force individual decisions inside what's supposed to be a collective fight. The league understood that. By letting teams move ahead, ownership sent a clear message without ever saying it publicly. We're not stopping the train. Roster planning continues. Expansion planning continues. The season is still being treated as real, with or without a finalized deal. That puts the pressure exactly where the union doesn't want it. Now, instead of negotiating in abstract terms about percentages and principles, players are staring at real numbers. Offers that affect rent, savings, family security, and career trajectory. The kind of decisions that don't wait patiently for press releases. And the league knows not everyone is equipped to wait. Veterans with endorsement deals and overseas options can afford patience. Younger players, fringe roster players, and mid-tier contributors often can't. For them, a qualifying offer isn't leverage, it's relief. That's why this move is so dangerous. It doesn't attack the union head-on, it sidesteps it. It turns a collective standoff into dozens of individual crossroads, all happening at once, all behind closed doors. And once even a few players choose certainty over solidarity, the tone of the negotiation changes permanently. This wasn't an accident, it was strategy. Because the fastest way to weaken unity isn't confrontation. It's temptation. It's easy to talk about unity when the fight lives on social media. Statements get shared, hashtags trend, everyone agrees to stand together in theory. But the moment qualifying offers start landing, theory turns into math, and math doesn't care about slogans. Here's the situation many players are about to face. You're not a star, you're not one of the handful of names driving ratings. You're a reliable rotation player making around $90,000 or $100,000 a year. You've backed the union publicly, you believe players deserve more, then your phone buzzes, it's your agent. A team wants you, not later, not after the CBA. Now. The number is real, guaranteed money, a role, stability. And suddenly, the entire negotiation looks different. This is the fracture point the league is betting on, because collective bargaining only works when individual incentives align. Right now, they don't. The top tier of players can afford to wait. They have savings, endorsements, overseas options. Time is leverage for them. For everyone else, time is risk. That's the uncomfortable truth. The WNBA Players Association knows this, which is why they're trying to frame the free agency process as meaningless without a new deal. But that framing only works if players believe it. And belief gets shaky when the alternative is walking away from life-changing money. What makes this even more complicated is where some of those offers are coming from. Teams with visibility, teams with sold-out crowds, teams attached to the league's current momentum. Being part of that ecosystem doesn't just mean a paycheck, it means exposure, opportunity, and relevance. For a mid-tier player, that can reshape an entire career. So the question stops being ideological and becomes personal. Do you turn down a concrete offer out of solidarity with players who already earn more than you ever have? Do you gamble your financial security on the hope that the union extracts a slightly better deal months from now? Or do you sign, secure your future, and let the politics sort themselves out? That's not selfishness, that's survival. And the league understands that survival beats symbolism more often than people like to admit. They're not trying to convince every player. They don't need to, they only need a few cracks. Once those appear, the pressure shifts back onto the union fast. Because unity is powerful. But unity is fragile when it starts costing people real money. And once that tension sets in, the negotiation stops being about owners versus players. It becomes players versus each other. This is the part most public statements will never admit. The real danger here isn't the league. It's what happens inside the WNBA Players Association once those qualifying offers start circulating. On the surface, the union looks unified. Everyone reposts the same messages. Everyone talks about collective strength. Everyone says they're standing together. But underneath that unity are wildly different personal realities, and those realities don't disappear just because a statement says they should. This negotiation is being driven largely by players at the top and players near the end. Veterans who have already earned, who may have overseas income, endorsements, or only a few seasons left. For them, squeezing every last dollar right now makes sense. A revenue-sharing model that pays off immediately matters more than long-term stability. If you're 31 or 32, future growth doesn't help you much. But that logic completely flips for younger and mid-tier players. If you're 23, 24, or 25, your leverage isn't urgency, it's time. A fixed salary cap with guaranteed annual increases actually works in your favor. You'll still be in your prime when those raises compound. You'll benefit from a league that survives, expands, and stabilizes. That's the split no one wants to talk about. When the union presents a single position, it masks the fact that not everyone is negotiating for the same future. Some players are negotiating for their last contract. Others are negotiating for their first real one. Those interests don't naturally align, and qualifying offers bring that conflict into the open. Because now, the decision isn't abstract. A younger player who gets a solid offer isn't thinking about union power in 5 years. She's thinking about securing a roster spot, building a resume, and staying in the league long enough to matter. Asking her to turn that down for the sake of a broader fight led by veterans is a much harder sell than it sounds on social media. And the league knows it. This is why the move is so effective. It doesn't require threats. It doesn't require bad press. It simply exposes the internal contradictions the union has been holding together with messaging. Once even a handful of players break ranks, quietly, professionally, without drama, the entire posture of the negotiation changes. The union can't claim full solidarity anymore. Owners gain proof that the current framework is good enough for some players. And suddenly, the burden shifts back onto the holdouts to explain why everyone else should keep waiting. That's how fractures form. Not with betrayal, not with greed, but with reality catching up to rhetoric. And once that happens, the union isn't negotiating from strength anymore. It's negotiating while trying to keep itself together. While everyone's focused on money and messaging, a much quieter problem is building, and it doesn't care who's right. Without a finalized CBA, there is no official season schedule. And without a schedule, arenas can't lock in dates. That might sound like a minor administrative issue, but in professional sports, it's a nightmare. Most WNBA teams don't own their buildings. They share them. NBA playoffs, NHL games, concerts, college tournaments, corporate events, all of those are competing for the same calendar space. Arena operators don't hold dates just in case. If there's no confirmed schedule, they move on. And once those dates are gone, they don't come back. This is where delay turns into damage. Scheduling a league isn't something you do in a few weeks. It takes months of coordination, travel logistics, broadcast windows, ticket sales, staffing, marketing, sponsorship activations. All of that work freezes without a CBA. The longer it stays frozen, the more the infrastructure around the league starts reallocating resources elsewhere. That's why people inside the league are getting nervous. On the surface, April still feels far away. Training camps haven't opened. Games aren't supposed to start yet. But behind the scenes, the window for clean scheduling is already shrinking. Every week without clarity increases the risk that teams will be forced into awkward dates, smaller venues, or compressed schedules that hurt the product. And it gets worse. The league is also trying to integrate a new franchise, the Golden State Valkyries. Expansion teams need time to draft players, build rosters, sell tickets, establish local partnerships. You can't do any of that without knowing roster rules, salary structures, or even when games are supposed to happen. Right now, that entire process is stalled. From the outside, this looks like a negotiation tactic. From the inside, it looks like credibility slipping. Sponsors don't love uncertainty. Broadcasters don't love instability. New fans, especially casual ones, don't wait around to see how a labor dispute resolves. They just move on. That's the risk the union may be underestimating. This isn't a situation where pressure builds evenly on both sides. Every day without a deal quietly advantages the parties that can wait and disadvantages the ones that can't. Arena operators will survive. Owners will survive. The league brand might survive in a reduced form. But players only get one prime. And the most dangerous part of this time bomb isn't that it explodes loudly. It's that by the time anyone reacts, the damage is already locked in. Part of what's emboldening the players right now is the belief that they have options. If the WNBA drags this out, if the season gets delayed, if things get ugly, there's this quiet assumption that players can just pivot, go elsewhere, find another platform, keep earning. That assumption is far shakier than people want to admit. The most common name floated as a backup plan is Unrivaled. On paper, it sounds promising: new money, new energy, a league positioned as player-friendly. But here's the part that doesn't get said out loud: interest does not equal sustainability. Reports and early indicators suggest viewership has been underwhelming, not non-existent, but nowhere near the level required to support hundreds of full-time professional salaries. Investors can prop something up for a season or two, but without consistent broadcast revenue, the math catches up fast. That matters because broadcast money is the backbone of every major sports league. Without it, you're not running a league, you're burning capital. Even if Unrivaled survives in some form, it cannot absorb the entire WNBA player pool. It doesn't have the roster spots, it doesn't have the calendar space, and it definitely doesn't have the infrastructure to suddenly become the primary home of women's professional basketball in the US. Overseas leagues get mentioned too, but that's not a real solution either. Those markets are finite. They already operate with tight budgets and limited roster demand. They're not going to double salaries overnight because a flood of American players becomes available. At best, a handful of top players benefit. Everyone else competes for fewer spots at similar or lower pay. This is where the safety net illusion becomes dangerous. Some players are negotiating as if walking away is a viable option, as if the WNBA folding or shrinking wouldn't dramatically reduce their earning power, as if there's a parallel ecosystem ready to catch them. There is. That's why the league is so confident playing the long game. They know alternatives are thin. They know most players can't afford a prolonged standoff. And they know that once fear replaces optimism, leverage shifts quickly. This isn't about scaring players, it's about realism. The WNBA, for all its flaws, is still the only platform capable of delivering scale, visibility, and long-term growth for women's basketball in America. Undermining it without a proven replacement isn't leverage. It's a gamble. And when people gamble based on safety nets that don't actually exist, they usually realize it too late, right when the ground disappears underneath them. There's one variable hovering over this entire standoff that makes everything riskier than it looks. And it's not a bargaining tactic, it's not a legal clause, it's a person. The current momentum of the WNBA is overwhelmingly tied to Caitlin Clark. That's not disrespect to anyone else in the league. It's not a value judgment. It's simply what the numbers say. Ratings spikes followed her, ticket demand followed her, social engagement followed her, corporate interest followed her. When she plays, the league feels unavoidable. When she's not the focus, the conversation thins out fast. That concentration of attention is both a blessing and a vulnerability. And here, where the union's position becomes tricky. Clark isn't the one making demands. She's not leading statements. She's not threatening work stoppages. She showed up, played, and became the face of the league through performance alone. To casual fans, the ones who showed up in 2024 and don't live on Label or Twitter, that matters. If those fans tune in expecting to see her and instead get a delayed season, empty headlines, or a public labor fight, they're not going to parse nuance. They're not going to study revenue splits. They're going to blame the people who appear to be stopping the games. That perception risk is massive. The league office knows it, owners know it, and whether they admit it or not, players know it too. Public sympathy in labor disputes is never guaranteed, and it's especially fragile when the growth story is new and attention is shallow. This is why the league's chess move with qualifying offers is so effective. It reframes the narrative away from owners versus players and toward who actually wants the season to happen. The more players sign, the harder it becomes to argue that the league is acting in bad faith. And all of this is happening while the league's biggest draw stays silent. That silence cuts both ways. It avoids drama, but it also removes a potential shield. If the league's most visible star isn't publicly backing the escalation, it becomes easier for fans to view the holdout as unnecessary or excessive, even if the underlying grievances are valid. That's the danger of negotiating during a boom driven by one figure. You don't just risk money, you risk momentum, goodwill, and trust all at the same time. And once that trust cracks, it doesn't reset when a deal finally gets signed. It lingers. This is the part of the conversation everyone circles around, but rarely confronts directly. The current version of the WNBA is not built on evenly distributed star power. It's built on a spike, and that spike has a name: Caitlin Clark. That's not disrespectful, it's not dismissive, it's just reality. The numbers tell the story. Ratings surged when she entered the league. Attendance followed her from city to city. Social media engagement didn't just rise, it concentrated. Sponsors didn't suddenly wake up and fall in love with women's basketball in the abstract. They followed attention, and attention followed Caitlin Clark. That creates a problem during a labor standoff. Because the fans who showed up in 2024 aren't legacy fans, many of them are casual, they're curious, they're new, and casual fans don't analyze labor disputes. They don't read CBA breakdowns. They don't differentiate between league offices and unions. They just know one thing: if the games don't happen, someone is stopping them. And right now, the most visible force threatening disruption is the players. That's where optics start to matter more than intent. Clark hasn't made demands. She hasn't escalated rhetoric. She hasn't positioned herself as a spokesperson for either side. She showed up, played, and carried the league into its most relevant moment ever. To a casual fan, that looks like professionalism. It looks like leadership through action. So when negotiations turn combative, and statements grow sharper, and talk of strikes enters the public space, the contrast becomes unavoidable. The league understands this dynamic, even if it never says it out loud. That's why the qualifying offer strategy is so potent. It subtly reframes the narrative. Instead of owners versus players, it becomes who wants the season to happen. Every player who signs reinforces that framing. Every delay makes the holdout side look more rigid. And here's the most uncomfortable part. If momentum collapses, if ratings fall, if arena dates disappear, if casual fans drift, the league won't blame itself publicly. The owners won't absorb that narrative. The blame will land on the people who are perceived to be blocking progress. That's not fair, but it's how public opinion works. This isn't just a negotiation happening in a vacuum. It's happening under a spotlight powered by one star, one storyline, and one fragile window of relevance. Misread that moment, and the damage extends far beyond salaries. Because when your growth is narrow, you don't get many chances to gamble with it. And this negotiation is gambling with exactly that. This is the part where the stakes finally come into focus. The WNBA isn't deciding whether players deserve more money. That argument was settled the moment 2024 happened. Ratings jumped, arenas filled, sponsors showed up. The value was real, and the players created it. What's being decided now is whether the league knows how to protect momentum, or whether it lets that momentum bleed out while everyone argues over leverage. The owners are playing a long, cold game. They can wait. They can absorb losses. They can survive a scaled-down league if they have to. The players can't. This is their livelihood, their window, their one shot to turn a historic breakthrough into something permanent. And right now, that window is narrower than it looks. Qualifying offers going out isn't about greed. It's about forcing reality to interrupt rhetoric. It's about turning abstract demands into concrete choices. Once players start signing, and some will, the balance of power shifts fast. Unity becomes harder to maintain. Messaging gets messier, and the union's leverage starts leaking out quietly, one contract at a time. At the same time, the clock keeps ticking on things no press release can pause: arena dates, broadcast schedules, expansion plans, casual fans who just discovered the league and haven't decided yet whether it's worth sticking around. Those fans won't wait through a drawn-out dispute. They'll replace the habit. That's what makes this moment so dangerous. The league finally broke through. It finally proved women's basketball could command attention at scale. And now, instead of building on that success, everyone involved is risking turning the Caitlin Clark era into a footnote instead of a foundation. This isn't about choosing owners or players. It's about recognizing asymmetry. One side can afford to lose time, the other can't. One side has alternatives, the other is betting on safety nets that may not exist. The smartest outcome still exists. A deal that raises pay, locks in stability, keeps the season intact, and preserves the growth everyone claims to care about. It's not perfect, it doesn't feel revolutionary, but it keeps the league alive long enough to fight bigger battles later. Because once games are missed, once dates are gone, once momentum fades, there's no rewind button. This is the moment that decides whether 2024 was the beginning of something lasting, or the peak before the fall. And in the next few days, we'll find out who blinks first.